In the last stream, we were working on beginning the hellish section of the quest book. We built our makeshift nether portal, went through to the nether, set up a digital miner to allow us to start harvesting ores from the nether, and then back over here in the overworld, we set up the empowerer, which is now going to allow us to actually start to make all of these empowered versions of pre-existing blocks from actually additions. And right at the end of the last episode, we put a bunch of diamonds into our anti-protonic nuclear synthesizer to begin making emeralds. The idea here being that we need to get, I think, 96 emeralds if we want to get enough dimensional emerald ore to set up yet another dimensional ore extractor, because we need basically unlimited emeralds to make all of the different emeraldic crystal blocks, which we're going to need to make these super empowered crystal blocks. And it turns out we actually need way more of these than I initially expected, because they're not only used for making the nether data model, they are also used in a couple of different multi-blocks that we're going to need to automate the production of hellish technium. And so, between streams, what I've gone ahead and done is a couple of things. I have gone ahead, first and foremost, and tripled up the number of biogenerators that we have down here. I taught the system how to make them, and then just requested 30 more of them, and hooked them up to our pre-existing setup. I've not changed the setup. It looks like we already were able to produce enough purified biofuel to run this many. We just didn't have all of them down. Now that I put them all down, we are making a few thousand redstone flux per tick more. The reason I did that is that I have had to turn a few things off since the end of the last stream. Specifically, I've turned off the quantum ring here, and as you saw, I did also turn off the anti-protonic nuclear synthesizer as well, and that's because not long after the end of the last stream, the base completely ran out of power, and when the base completely runs out of power, things get kind of dire kind of fast. And so between streams, I've let things chug along, and we do now thankfully have a fairly healthy backlog of power for the time being, and of course we're producing more. But one of the things we are going to have to work on sooner rather than later is a much bigger power infrastructure that's going to allow us to push forward into the end of this pack, because even now with the upgraded biofuel generators, I really don't think we're producing enough power to progress on with the pack after hellish technium at the very least. So that's something I'm going to put on the back burner, because we do have power for the time being. But what I want to work on initially today is automating the empowerer here, because as we just saw, we need a lot of these super empowered crystal blocks, which means that we need a lot of all of these different empowered blocks. And so what I've gone ahead and done over here is I've thrown down another XNet controller with a barrel, and if we grab our facade wrench, I've also gone ahead and thrown down a connector underneath each and every display stand. There isn't one connected to the empowerer because we don't need to send anything to the empowerer, although actually that is incorrect now that I think about it. We do need to send something to the middle block, and so I am going to have to get another connector here. I'm also going to put an importer on the bottom of that as well, and so we are going to have to, I think, put that on the side like this. Essentially, the plan here is going to be to encode a pattern. For example, if we wanted to teach our system how to make the empowered Inori crystals, we should be able to shift-click in a pattern, as we normally would, like so, and encode. Then, if we grab a pattern provider, this pattern provider is going to be placed down on top of that barrel that I have over here. We're then, of course, going to make sure that points down, like so. We're then going to throw in our pattern. And now, if we connect this up to our dense cable, we have essentially told the system that if it sends one block of Inori crystal with 2 blocks of iron and 2 blocks of quartz to this barrel, it will get back the empowered Inori crystal. Now what we have to do is make that true. The way we're going to do that is over in here. I have already set up an energy channel. So right now we have a channel that is pulling energy from this guy, the quantum entangler porter, and sending it round to all of the display stands, and also, of course, to the controller itself. This is all the exact same setup we've done a few times before. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new item channel. In here, we're going to extract from the barrel, and we're going to insert into all of the display stands. What we're then going to do is we're going to use the whitelist feature to specify what we want to go into each display stand. As far as the Inori crystal is concerned, we need the quartz and we need the iron. And all we need to do here is make sure that 2 of the display stands are filtered to quartz, like this and like this, and then that the other 2 are filtered to iron, like this and like this. And then we also do need to set the empowerer to insert as well, and here is where we actually do need to have at least one block of Inori crystal, because we also need to go ahead and set that to insert as well, like that. And so now, if we put all of the items in, like this, kind of mimicking what the AE2 system will do, you'll see that it does actually work and it does produce an empowered Inori crystal. And so the final piece of the puzzle here is just to get the import bus that we requested earlier, place that onto this guy right here, and then connect that up in the same way that we're also going to connect up our pattern provider, and that is basically empowered Inori crystals automated. Now, there is a slight problem that we are going to run into if we now try and add multiple different crystal patterns to that pattern provider. Okay, so all of that is now connected up and these devices are online, and I've gone ahead and encoded another pattern here. This one is for the empowered void crystal. This is made with fluix blocks, graphite, and void crystal blocks. The problem that we're going to run into now is that if I were to request both of these at the same time, it's going to send everything down into this barrel, and of course what we're going to do over here is we're going to do the exact same thing again. We're going to whitelist two of these for fluix blocks like this, and then we're going to whitelist the other two for graphite blocks like this, and then of course the final stage is to whitelist the actual empowerer itself for the void crystal. And so the problem is that if we request both of these at the same time, which is likely by the way, because the end goal is going to be that we just want to request the super empowered crystals, and our system is going to automatically request all of the subcomponents required, which is all of these blocks. And so what will happen if we leave the system as it currently is it's going to send all of the items to this barrel, and there's a chance that we end up in this weird situation where there's like a block of quartz here, and then like a fluix block here, and then a Restonia crystal block here, and it all doesn't match the recipe that needs to be done. The good news is that inside the pattern provider, there's a mode on the left for blocking, and what we can do is we can change this from the default mode, which is ignore the contents of the target inventory, basically don't do anything, just send everything that you have been requested to send. If we change this to do not push crafting ingredients if the inventory contains a pattern input, essentially what that does is it will only ever put the ingredients for one recipe at a time into this barrel, and it will not actually send the next set of ingredients until this barrel no longer has any items that are part of a previous crafting request. And so now we should be able to go ahead and just, if I put these items in the system actually, let's give this a go. Can I request an empowered void crystal? We have all the items, they should all be sent through to here, they should all be put onto their respective display stands, and they should convert and then import. And it totally works. Nice. And so now, essentially, we need to do the exact same thing for every single tier of block that we have here. None of these should be too difficult. The diamantine crystal is just Certus quartz and platinum, both of which we have. We might have to go ahead and either teach our system how to make things like Certus quartz and platinum blocks, or look at putting a few more compacting drawers down around the base to make sure that things like platinum are already available in block form. The same is true over here with things like sapphire and lead. The trouble with sapphire, as well as over here the ruby and of course the peridot, is that we actually don't have those coming in automatically just yet. And this kind of leads us to a separate problem that we're going to run into. The good news here is that our emeralds are done, which is fantastic, and that's going to bring our antimatter back online, which should get us even more ultimate technium. But the problem that we're going to run into is that we're not producing rubies, peridots, or sapphires. Now, to make those, we do have to go back to the New World questline, and these actually have a bit of a unique crafting process. You'll see here that in the pressurized reaction chamber, we have to take either nether ruby ore or dimensional ruby ore and combine it with water and clean quartz slurry to get a ruby. And the same is true for the sapphires and the peridots. They all have the same recipe, and then as a byproduct we get this spent nether waste, which, like the spent nuclear waste before it, is actually a required ingredient for making hellish technium. And so we do need to store this and use it later on to make that hellish technium. Now, I believe this means we're going to have to do two things. One, we're going to have to set up 3 more dimensional ore extractors, all of which do have to be in the nether. Again, if we look at the dimensional ruby ore, it does specifically have to be in the nether, just like the zinc did last episode. So we need 3 more dimensional ore extractors. Between streams I started on this, I've requested 2 more already. Let me get another one of those going real quick with the system we set up last episode. We are then, of course, also going to need a 4th one of those as well for the emeralds that we were just working on a moment ago. And then we're actually going to need a 5th one, because in order to get clean quartz slurry, This is actually a resource that we get by processing dirty quartz slurry with purifying water, and if you've watched any of the previous episodes, this will look familiar because this is what we're doing on our lower level multiple times right about here. So you combine the dirty slurry with purified water. You get that dirty slurry by combining dimensional ore with sulfuric acid. And so, of course, if we look here at the clean quartz slurry, it's made from dirty quartz slurry, which is made from, you guessed it, yet another dimensional ore. And so, just like the rest of these, it does have to be put in the nether. And so really, what I'm going to do now is make even more of all of this right here, which again is one of the reasons why we are kind of running low on power, because these machines do use a fair amount of power. For example, the dimensional replica ore we set up last episode uses 1028 RF per tick on its own. The zinc one also uses a fair amount of power as well. I think we should have enough power to set up the extra 5, but there is a non-zero chance that we actually start to lose power once we have all of those up and running. But either way, I'm going to go ahead and set up 5 more dimensional ore extractors, 1 for peridot, 1 for sapphires, 1 for ruby, 1 for nether quartz, and 1 for emeralds. And then finally, we should be able to actually look at working our way towards the super empowered crystal block. Alright, so quite a while later, we now have dimensional sapphire ore, dimensional ruby ore, and dimensional peridot ore. All we did was go back to the digital miner and specify each of the nether versions of these ores individually until we had 16 of each, run them through the dimensional infuser, and now over in the nether, we are ready to get these going inside of their own dimensional ore extractors, all of which are up and ready to go. So over here, we now have 4 of these. I have made a few tweaks to the setup that we have here. Namely, I have brought over a draw controller and then run trim to these 4 storage drawers, and then all we're going to do is throw down some logistical transporters to extract the ore from these ore extractors so that we don't have to have a storage bus on each and every one of these. We can just use the one AE2 channel to access the draw controller, which of course in turn has access to all of these drawers. Now, of course, right now it doesn't have access to these drawers because our quantum ring is currently offline, but once we go back through to the overworld, we can re-engage that and all of these should become available. And then the good news when it comes to the ruby, the peridot, and the sapphire here is that we don't actually have to run these guys through the full line of machines that we normally would for every other dimensional ore. In fact, if we look at the ruby ore here, as we saw just a moment ago, we just need the one machine, which is the pressurized reaction chamber. With 3 of these, we can go directly from the dimensional version of the gem ore into the gem itself. We don't need the full lineup of chemical dissolution chambers and chemical crystallizers and chemical mixers and enrichment chambers, etc. We can just have the one machine do everything that we want it to do. We should definitely go ahead and lock these drawers, otherwise our AE2 system is going to try and put random stuff into here, which would not be ideal, even though, again, I am going to set this to extract only, because I don't really foresee a reason why we would need to insert dimensional ore into this draw controller. Either way, though, with all of these locked, we might need to make sure that this area is chunk loaded, because right now it is definitely not chunk loaded. We can unload this one because the digital miner is able to chunk load itself. And then if we want to keep both of these chunks chunk loaded, which I think is going to be necessary to keep these chunk loaded, we are then going to have to go back to the overworld and kind of unchunk load one of these chunks so that we can get an extra force loaded chunk. Let's get rid of like this guy for now. And then if we do a quick one of these again, boom, that should now hopefully keep this chunk loaded. And now back over in the overworld, I have gone ahead and set up the whole line of machinery for emeralds. So over here, we've managed to get 155 emeralds. It's working in the exact same way as we expect. And we do have excess machines now because I didn't realize ahead of time that we actually only needed the dimensional ore extractor and not the full lineup of machinery that usually goes along with it. And so now we do have kind of an excess of these machines, which I think is mostly a good problem to have. And so now it's just a case of getting 3 of these pressurized reaction chambers. As per usual, I think it's probably going to be easiest if we just teach our system how to make the PRC encode, and then just see if we can request 3 of those to get all 3 of these crystals online. The only thing we're missing is 2 dynamic tanks, which if memory serves me right is just steel. It is, and so I will go ahead and just make one set of those and then request the 3. One thing we are, of course, going to have to do, which I have yet to do, is get yet another dimensional ore extractor for nether quartz, because, of course, in order to actually use the 3 pressurized reaction chambers here, we need that nether slurry. And so I think what we'll do for nether quartz is kind of the same thing we've done for zinc. We'll set up the ore extractor in the nether, making the dimensional nether quartz, and then we'll bring it back to the overworld. I will set up the full line of machines like this, even though, of course, initially all we need is the slurry, which we'll get from the chemical washer, but I do think that having a continuous supply of nether quartz being made on top of the slurry is still going to be good for us, because, of course, we are kind of using nether quartz as our main production at the moment of nether matter in the creation of unstable matter, which we need for more ultimate technium. And so I do think having unlimited nether quartz is going to help with that going forward. For now, though, let me get the dimensional ore extractor and the associated machines once again up and running. And again, yet more ore extracting later, we now have dimensional nether quartz coming in. I have also gone ahead and reconnected up the ME quantum ring. If we go and check up here, I have made a few tweaks to the base as well. I tried to set this up correctly before, but I think I kind of failed in doing so. It is now set up correctly, though, where all of the power that we're generating from here only goes through the battery, and all the power from here also goes through the battery. So everything we're generating goes in one side of the induction matrix, and then everything we're using comes out of the other side. It's really useful because now we can see that we're producing 49,270 redstone flux per tick, and we are using just shy of 30,000. It kind of fluctuates between 25 and 30,000, depending on what's being done at any particular moment in time. So for now, at least, we do have a little bit of excess power, but of course, that's with things like the anti-protonic nuclear synthesizer here not really doing anything, and also none of our machines really working either. If I was to request some nether quartz and run that through our replication system, that would start to use the anti-protonic nuclear synthesizer and would massively increase the amount of power that we're using. But either way, down on the bottom level, we of course have our setup for nether quartz. It is right here, and it should be getting ready to work. All we need to do is grab our dimensional quartz ore, put it into this export bus, which I have hooked up to the system, and now we should see dimensional quartz ore making its way in. It totally is, and that's going to run down the line and process it. Now, of course, the thing that we really want, initially at least, is this clean slurry here, and so we should probably go ahead and grab some kind of tank. I will grab the ultimate tank here, and I'm going to put that down right about there. If we then set this to export fluids to the top, oh, so this is not a fluid, or it is a fluid, it's not a liquid, it's a gas, which means we need a chemical tank for this. Let's request an ultimate chemical tank real quick, and then if we place that down on top, we should be able to set this to eject chemicals with auto eject on, and that should put the clean slurry in the top. I am not too sure if it has a preference for where it sends it. For example, if I put this here, I don't know if it's going to send it here before here. It looks like it is, which is actually good for us because we do want to have this backup with the clean quartz slurry before we start making excess nether quartz. Then what we should be able to do, if Applied Mechanistics is working as intended, is we should be able to put a storage bus directly onto that chemical tank, and then later we should be able to use exporters to export the clean slurry to wherever we decide to put our dissolution chambers down. So let's do this, and let's do this. I'm pretty sure that with that we have fully saturated this dense cable. We're now at 32 out of 32 channels, which is fine, of course, because if we need more channels, we can just get another set of these wireless connectors going to give us even more channel access wherever we want it around the base. Speaking of which, we need to kind of decide where we're going to put our pressurized reaction chambers, and we need to set those up to actually begin receiving the dimensional ruby, peridot, and sapphire, and also, of course, to receive that clean nether slurry so we can actually start to process them into the actual ruby, sapphire, and peridot crystals. Alright, so I've gone ahead and thrown down the 3 pressurized reaction chambers over here next to our blast furnaces making the crushed deep slate. And I've also thrown down another wireless connector, which is connecting from here all the way down to right behind here, because of course this cable is already fully saturated. And so what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to use the ME import-export bus, which is, as the name would suggest, a device that should allow us to both import and export with the same bus. The reason we're going to use this for this setup is that we have a lot of stuff to both input and extract from this machine. Specifically, if we look back at the recipe for rubies, and of course it's the same for sapphires and peridots, we need to both insert the dimensional ruby ore, insert the clean quartz slurry, insert the water. On top of that, we need to extract the ruby, extract the spent nether waste, and insert power. And so it's quite possible that without using something like this, we would have to cover every single side of this machine in some kind of pipe or cable, which would work, but would be a little bit messy. And so instead, what we're going to try here is getting 3 import-export buses. And if we put those on here, we should be able to use those to both export the items and the fluid. So let's give this a try. If I go and do 1, 2, 3, like that, and we also do 1, 2, 3 like that, that should connect it up to the system. And now in here, let's start with the dimensional ruby ore. We want to export that via this. Then on top of that, we also want to export water, which of course we should be able to do because we did set up our system to have access to water previously. Then we want to do the same with the clean quartz slurry, which again, I'm hoping I can drag from here. I totally can, and if that's working as intended, that should insert there. Let me make sure that the chemical is set to input on the back. It is. I'll come back to that one in a second. Then we also need to make sure that this is set to receive items on the back. By default, it's set to receive energy. If we change that to input, the dimensional ruby ore goes in there. That's perfect. The reason this is not working is we've made the exact same mistake we did last time. We need to make sure that this is set to output so that the storage bus is actually able to extract from the tank. And so now, over here, this is working and the clean quartz slurry is being sent around. Perfect. So now the question is, can I change this? Right now, this is set to input for items. If I change it to input and output, it does actually work. Because this is both an import and an export bus, we are able to both send the dimensional ruby ore in and pull the final rubies out. Although, to be fair, that's not really what we want to do in this scenario. We want to leave this set to input because we want the front to be the output, because that's where we want to store the rubies going forward. We do, though, want to send this spent nether waste somewhere. And as far as that's concerned, I'm assuming that's going to also require a chemical tank. And so what we could do here is if we make one of these and we get another storage bus, we could put this down really anywhere that we like. And then presumably in here, we could set the back of this to be both input and output for chemicals. And then if I were to do something like this and kind of put this down here, could I then have my chemical tank on top of that? I can, and look at that, it's sending the spent nether waste up into that chemical tank because it's extracting it from here using this as an import bus, which is good. That works exactly how we want it to work. And so now it's just a case of kind of copying this over for sapphires and peridots, and then of course linking these to the system with the remote upgrades that we have for our storage drawers. Chat does make a good point here that we should go ahead and specify that we want this to be used for nether waste. This is the storage bus connecting to the chemical tank. Right now, the nether waste is the only chemical that we're moving this way, but in the future, as we expand things out, it's good practice to put the spent nuclear waste in the storage bus. That means that this can only put spent nuclear waste into this chemical tank. And there we go, we're producing the rubies, the sapphires, and the peridots all automatically. I have put in 8 energy upgrades into each of these, which has massively reduced the power usage down to 400 micro FE per tick or milli FE per tick. A really small amount of power is being used for these. We could put speed upgrades in, but looking at these, we're actually using the dimensional ores faster than they're coming in at the moment, and so there's really no need to put any speed upgrades in at the moment. In here, we should set this to dump excess. That means that if by some chance we do manage to fill up with 8.192 million millibuckets of the spent nether waste, the system won't stop working. It will keep going and just delete any excess. We don't want to do that over here with the clean quartz, because when this fills up, we then want to use that clean quartz slurry for making actual nether quartz. So we do want that one to actually back up, and so we don't want to turn on the dumping. Now, though, that we have all of those automated and coming in, we can kind of pivot back over to teaching our system how to make the remainder of these empowered blocks. We have the Inori, we have the Void Crystal, we just need to do the Diamantine, the Palace, the Restonia, and the Emeretic, all of which now should be a fair bit easier to teach. And a quick bit of pattern encoding later. We now have all of the empowered patterns in here. And so now, looking at a lot of these, it's really just a case of me going around and upgrading a couple of our drawers to compacting drawers so that we have things available in both gem or ingot and block form. So for example, right here, Peridot is already a compacting drawer. We did set that up just a moment ago. Those are all coming in both gem and block form. But then things like the empowered Restonia crystal here does require a block of a nanite, and currently our nanite is not being stored in block form. It's just being stored in ingot form. The same is true at the end here for things like platinum. We saw that earlier. Things like lead as well, I think, are currently not being stored in block form. And so real quick, I'm going to go around and upgrade a couple of our storage drawers to compacting drawers. Whilst I'm doing it, I might also go ahead and finally upgrade our technium drawers as well to compacting drawers so that we can have the technium available in both nugget and ingot form. As far as I'm aware, there is no block version of the techniums, and so it should just be a case of getting the 4 tier 2 compacting drawers, 1 for each technium, and just swapping out what we have currently, making sure that we move the downgrades over as well. This is one of those situations where the time in a bottle that we made last episode actually comes in really useful though, because now, instead of having to use all 3 of these research crafters, we can just put in the draw compacting blueprint, we can put in the compactor, and then using the time in a bottle here, we can accelerate this to like 32 times speed, and it's way faster at making things like these compacting cores, which we can then go ahead and very easily craft into the compacting drawers. Alright, so a little bit of compacting later, and basically everything that I said was going to be compacted is now being compacted. We finally have all of our techniums available in ingot and nugget form, which is going to make our auto crafting easier going forward. We've also, of course, done things like the Certus quartz and the platinum and the uranium. One that I didn't do is up here. We have the nanite. The reason for that is that it turns out the block of a nanite is actually a custom recipe. You can't just put it into a compacting drawer. It doesn't work. And so, in fact, we're going to have to teach our system how to craft 8 nanite with an ultimate technium machine frame in order to make that nanite block, which is a little expensive and is going to make it tricky, I think, for us to make some of these. I was just contemplating with the Twitch chat whether or not we should automate the production of the center blocks here. So the diamond time blocks, the Restonia blocks, the emeradic crystal blocks, the palace blocks. We could have set up like 5 or 6 of these where we have a system that kind of turns blocks of redstone into blocks of Restonia, and we set it up so we always have, 26 of them ready to go at any given time. But looking at what we need them for, I don't think that's necessary, at least not just yet. And so instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and get like a bunch of redstone blocks. I say a bunch of redstone blocks. We don't have that much redstone. I'll take 32 for now, and I'll do 32 of each, I guess, and we'll just zap those in front of the atomic reconstructor that we have. The same is also true for the lapis here. We can take some lapis and make some palace crystals, and then, of course, emeralds we should have, and diamonds we should have, because those are coming in automatically. Emeralds appear to not be connected. I assume that's because I've not hooked this draw up with a remote upgrade. That is, of course, very fixable. Let's do one of those. Fantastic, and that gives us access to the 475 emeralds we have. Those are coming in nice and quickly, so we'll take a bunch of those as well. Diamonds we have even more of, because those have been working kind of passively in the background for a decent amount of time now, 2,260. That's actually the limit of what the draw can hold there, so it could be worth changing that to a compacting draw or giving that just a draw upgrade to allow that to store more going forward. But real quick, I'm going to go ahead and zap all of the different blocks that we need here, those being coal, nickel, diamond, redstone, lapis, and emerald. And once I've zapped all of those, we'll then put our system to the test by seeing if we can't request the super empowered block. In fact, we might be able to go ahead and teach our system how to make the super empowered block by encoding this recipe right here, and of course throwing that atop our crystal assembler, which thankfully we do have over here. So we're going to throw that in like that. I'm going to zap all the crystals. I'm going to drop the blocks of crystal into the system. And then in theory, we should just be able to go ahead and request the super empowered blocks. And if everything goes to plan, it should just work. Lapis is going to be our problem. Interesting, because we have 32 blocks of coal. We have 32 blocks of nickel. We can zap both of those. We don't have what it takes to make 32 blocks of lapis. That should be fine though, because lapis is just lead, right? Can I do this? Can I zap a block of lead? I can, and I can zap the lapis into palace. Perfect. Okay, let's give this a try. So you all go in the system. Can I request, just for now, 1 super empowered crystal? The answer appears to be no. It thinks we're missing some platinum, some sapphire blocks, and some nanite. Okay, does nanite show up in the system. It does not. That's probably because I broke the drawer, and when you break the drawer, these upgrades break, and so now that's showing. Perfect. The rubies and sapphires, I think, should be available down here. They are. We might need more than 9 blocks of each. I'm actually not entirely certain how much we need of each particular one. Let me do the same for platinum here. I think we've probably had a similar problem where this is not connected up with framed trim. Yes, I've broken this tile and not replaced it with trim. I think that's made the platinum not show up. That's completely fine. And then, of course, over here, I think I might have just not put the upgrades in at all. I didn't. Okay, that's actually good, though, because it means that we can just throw in one of these group upgrades, like this. That should make all of those appear to the system. And so now, finally, let's give this another try. We are missing one ultimate Technium. It says available one, missing one. I was under the impression that we actually had more than one in the drawer here. We do. Again, that is another upgrade issue. Isaac, let's do that. And then let's give this a try. Boom, and start. And so, in theory, we should start to see over here, again, one by one, the empowered blocks being sent over and being crafted. Of course, what I have not done yet is actually configured this. So, in fact, let me do these one at a time. If I take these out, that is kind of going to work. It will put the next set in, but that's fine. All we need to do is go through and actually put the remainder of the items in. So diamantine goes in here. Of course, we do platinum in 2 of these, just like we did before, and then we do Certus quartz in the other 2. And so real quick, I'm going to do this for the remaining 3 recipes. And for now, I will have to put the ones that we've not taught in manually. But once I've done that, the next set of diamantine that comes through should go exactly to where it needs to go. And it's done. Actually, that did not take anywhere near as long as I thought it would. Can I request a second one? I can. If I click start, it actually kind of all comes together faster than I expected. We could try and make it even faster if we upgraded the connectors that are under here, so the connectors that kind of point up to the display stands. If we replaced those, actually, it might just be the connector on the barrel. If we replace that with an advanced connector, we can reduce the number of ticks per operation down from 10 to 5, making it twice as fast at sending the blocks around to the display stands. But look at that, it really doesn't take that long for a block of super empowered crystals to come in, and that is 18 super empowered crystals ready to go. Now it looks like somewhere along the line, oh, of course, it wants me to actually have one of every empowered block as part of the quest. So let me request like one of each of these manually so that we can take them out and just hold them. And then once we've taken them all out, then we can go ahead and complete these quests. There we go. That's all of the empowered blocks complete. I am hopeful that I can recraft that back into a block. I totally can. And that's the next 2 quests complete. Fantastic. And so now that we have access to these super empowered crystals, we can go back to what I was talking about right at the end of the last episode, which was the making of these nether data models. So it takes 2 super empowered crystals per nether data model here. And these are going to be used to make a bunch of data models from hostile neural networks. We need to make the wither skeleton, the magma cube, the blaze, the ghast, and on top of that, we also need an extra one of these nether data models for making nether stars as well, because I believe the best way for us to make these is using the nether data model and the wither skeleton skull inside of a mob infuser as well. So to do that, though, we are going to need 5 of these nether data models, which means that we're going to need 30 ultimate Technium ingots, and currently we have exactly 1 ultimate Technium ingot available by the looks of it inside of our system. Yes, it's right here. I can put that back in the storage drawer there. We got 1. Now, again, it's just antimatter pellets, though, that are our limiting factor. And as we've seen before, we can use either glowstone or nether quartz or really anything we like here as our nether production material of choice. Let me check in here, though, because I think we were also running a little low on quantum as well. We are. Quantum is ender pearls. Ender pearls, we have managed to get a few more over, up to 272 of these. We can throw those in here as well. That's going to give us a big influx of quantum as well, which should make even more of these, but I think it's still going to take a bit of time before we can get all of those coming together. The good news is there's other stuff we can work on whilst we wait for this. For example, we've actually yet to make the blaze powder that we were working on last episode as well. For this, we need 1 gunpowder and 4 blazing sawdust. We have 2 blazing sawdust. For this, we need those lava planks that we were making last episode. If we quickly run a few more of those through our crushing factory, that should get us a bunch of blazing sawdust. And we do need a fair amount of this, right? Because we need to get 18 blaze powder to make the blaze data model. At that point, of course, we can make an unlimited amount of blaze powder, but it does mean that to get started here, we are going to need a fair bit more blazing sawdust, which needs more lava planks, which needs more warped planks or crimson planks. Now, speaking of the crimson and warp planks, something that somebody in the Twitch chat pointed out to me earlier is that we can grow the planks in a cloche. We can grow the crimson fungus or the warped fungus in a cloche, and in doing so, we do actually get crimson fungus or warped fungus 50% of the time, and the reason that's useful is you'll see if I hold shift, you do actually get nether matter from a crimson fungus, as well as the carrot matter as well. I forget the name of the carrot. Is it organic? It is organic. And so if we wanted to, we could actually go back to the nether, try and get some crimson fungus from the crimson forest biome, bring that back, set up a bunch of cloches with upgrades like we've been doing for wood over here, and just grow these crimson fungi, which we could then use as our source of nether going forward, which I think is going to be a better solution than using either glowstone or nether quartz. And as a side benefit, it also gets us more of these crimson stems should we need any more of the lava planks going forward for things like the blazing sawdust. And so real quick, I'm going to go get some of those fungi and we'll see if we can't get that going. All right, so I've managed to get 5 crimson fungus. Really, we only need 1 to get started, but it turns out that if you want to grow the crimson fungus here, you either have to place the cloche in the nether. You'll see when we hover over the fungus here, it says in dimension the nether, or we have to make a nether upgrade and put that into one of the upgrade slots inside the cloche to allow us to do it in the overworld. Given that we already have this set up here, I figured that we might as well go ahead and drop down a frame draw like this. If it's touching the draw controller, we don't need trim. And then from there, if we were to just go ahead and do something like this, we could put down the 5 cloches that I've made, like so. We could drop a piece of dirt into each and every one of these, along with, of course, one of our crimson fungi, and that is going to start, slowly but surely, producing everything associated with the crimson fungus. Now, the reason I've put down the 2x2 draw is that you do get 4 outputs here, and so we do want to make sure that they all have a place to go. In fact, I'm going to lock that draw to make sure that all of the slots are allocated correctly. And then I've also gone ahead and requested 5 of the tier 3 percentage upgrades, 5 of the tier 1 percentage upgrades, and 5 of the fixed tier 1 speed upgrades. That's because all 3 of these together give what I believe is the fastest combination of speed upgrades to get this to cycle once every 40 ticks, which is once every 2 seconds. Of course, we do still have to worry about the fact that we are not yet at the point where we have unlimited nether curio access. The good news is that over here I've been putting one in ahead of time, so there's always one ready for when I need to get one. And now we can head back and just make sure that each and every one of these has all 3 upgrades in, making this hopefully pretty fast for us. So if we do that, this should now be coming in pretty quickly. Let's make sure that each and every one of these has an allocated slot down here. And then, of course, it's just a case of setting all of these to extract. And then all of that should be available and accessible from our system in the overworld. And at which point we can then, going forward, use these instead of nether quartz as our nether matter of choice. Over here, in the time it took me to do that, we are up to 13 ultimate Technium Ingots. And of course, our limiting factor is still antimatter. Back over here, the problem is kind of a mix between nether and quantum. I did request 512 nether quartz, so we do have a bunch of that ready to go, and I can throw all of that into here. On the quantum front, though, we're not really getting the ender pearls as fast as I would like. I can, of course, take all of the ender pearls that we have and drop them into here, but that's not going to be a permanent solution. One thing the Twitch chat has pointed out is that we can, if we want, make dimensional ender ore, this stuff right here, which we can then process through the same line of machines that we've been doing for all of our other dimensional ores directly into ender pearls. And so it could well be worth looking at setting up another dimensional ore extractor for that dimensional ore. To get started with that, we really just need some ender ore, which is made from ender dust, which of course is just ender pearls ground down. So maybe it's worth keeping a few of these crates back to allow us to do that. I think in the long run, that's probably the better way to do that. For now, though, we are getting ultimate technium in, and I'm fairly confident that we might be able to get to 30 in the not so distant future. And so real quick, what I'm going to do whilst I wait for that is I'm going to go ahead and see about getting the blaze powder here from the fire logs using the same system that we used last time. And I'm also going to go ahead and autocraft a bunch more simulation chambers and loot fabricators, at least 5 more of each of these. Of course, this is where you do want to make sure that you have at least some ender pearls lying around. Let me get 5 more of you, start, and 5 more of you as well. And I'll set those up over here. You're saying you don't have overworld predictions, eh? Let me just drop those in manually for now. And start. We'll put those down over here so that once we have the Ghast, Blaze, Magma Cube, and Wither Skeleton data models, we can hopefully just drop those in and have them begin producing their respective predictions and their mob drops. So once we have at least 72 blazing sawdust, we should now be able to go ahead and just kind of dump this all in here with the gunpowder. And I've not taught the AE2 system this because we're only going to be doing this recipe until we have enough blaze powder to get the blazing data model. But what I have done is I've gone ahead and just specified on the inputs here that blazing sawdust can be sent to all 4 display stands and that gunpowder can be sent to the middle, so that now I can just dump the gunpowder and blazing sawdust into the barrel, and it's going to slowly but surely make us as much blaze powder as possible. Slowly but surely we are getting more ultimate technium. We're up to 16 now, with I think enough unstable matter to get us up to about 25. So we're getting close. The good news is we don't have to wait until we have all 30 before we get started here. We should be able to go ahead and actually make the blaze data model before then. So if we want to make the nether data model, we do now, I believe, have everything that we need if we just do something like this. Oh, our system does not know how to make the model framework. Let me go ahead and teach that real quick. We'll encode that and then just whack it in above our inscriber, specifically the general purpose inscriber we have at the end. Let's try that one more time. Can I have one of these? Start. I can. Nice. And there's our nether data model. That should be another quest complete. It is indeed. There is also a quest for the amethyst shard here, which is made by just crushing one of those super crystals. I don't know specifically what we need that for, but I'm assuming it's going to be necessary at some point in the not so distant future, and it puts us one step closer to fully completing that quest line. And now with this nether data model, we just need some more ultimate technium nuggets and the crates of blaze powder. Those crates of blaze powder are pretty much good to go. Let's go ahead and do these 1, 2. And apparently we've not completed the quest for actual blaze powder. There we go, fantastic. And with that, we should then be able to do something like this to get the blaze data model. And now, if we take the simulation chambers and loot fabricators from a second ago, we should be able to set those up in such a way to not only get us the blaze predictions and therefore unlimited blaze rods, but we're going to start to get the generalized nether predictions as well as a byproduct. And as soon as we have 8 of these, we can finally look at making the heat protection curio 3, which is going to give us infinite heat protection in the nether. Okay, so with a quick duplication of our pre-existing setup, I did go ahead and get rid of the setup for making the replica ingots because, of course, that is no longer necessary. We're doing that downstairs. And so now we thankfully have a much cleaner setup here. And we do have, look at that, our first generalized nether prediction. The good news is you get one of those every time whether or not the simulation fails. So even if it fails to make a blaze prediction, we are still going to get the generalized nether prediction. And of course, if we wanted to here, we could do something like this. That would increase the power usage, but does massively increase the speed at which we're going to get those 8 generalized nether predictions. Speaking of which, let me go and grab my curio. I actually don't know if I can upgrade the curio that I have. We will find out if I quickly crush 1 netherite ingot over here. That's going to get us a netherite dust. Can I then do this? I can. Perfect. And then, of course, over here, as soon as we have 8 of these, we've now got 20, we can then go ahead and do something like this and like this. And now we finally have the Heat Protection 3 permanent curio, so we never again have to worry about burning in the nether. That is fantastic. Cool. So, of course, over time, this is going to slowly but surely level up until it becomes self-aware, at which point we will start getting more blaze rods. And then, of course, we can turn those into blaze powder in the future if we want. And so now, really, in terms of progressing through to the hellish Technium machine, we kind of do just need to get the other data models here so that we can make the debris, which is going to allow us to make the ancient infuser, to then make the ancient debris, which is required for making hellish technium. And for that, we kind of just need to get even more ultimate technium. Right now, we do have enough to make at least 2 more data models. And so it's probably worth going ahead and looking at making maybe the Wither Skeleton and the Magma Cube data models. For the Wither Skeleton data model here, we do need to first get some Wither Skeleton bones. Thankfully, these are makeable using the mob infuser. And we do have a mob infuser sitting right here, which we could tap into. I did notice that we might have to make another one of these or potentially look at putting a Technium machine frame in here because I think we're not quite producing the prediction matrices fast enough. Like we're slowly but surely running out of those. We could put like an ultimate Technium machine frame in there. It's a little bit expensive, but it is the fastest one that we have available to us. Let me do one of those. That is going to make that just a little bit faster. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and get another one of these Nether data models and then see if we can't make these Wither Skeleton bones by placing regular bones into that mob infuser. Now, we do actually have to make some regular bones. It looks like, though, they are purchasable from the system. And thankfully, we do have a decent number of tech books, which I think we are still making passively down on our lower level as part of our creosote production system. So let's go ahead and get just 2 regular bones for the time being. And then back over here, we should now be able to make the Nether data model. We totally can. And if we temporarily kind of stop this, we can do this, and that should get us 2 bones if we put it in the Nether. Okay, fine. Let me do this and this, and I'm just going to go ahead and make another one of these mob infusers, and we'll place the second mob infuser in the Nether to allow us to make the Wither Skeleton bones. Alright, so over here, let's throw down the mob infuser, and let's do one of these and one of those. Perfect. So, now, that should get us the necrotic bones. It also turns out that we can actually make the prediction matrices twice as fast here in the Nether. If we look at the recipe for the prediction matrix, it takes 1 glass to make 1 prediction matrix and 100 ticks in the overworld. But if we do the exact same thing in the Nether, it requires twice as much power, but does make 2 prediction matrices from 1 glass. And so it is twice as efficient on the glass front, so it's possible it could be worth bringing that through into the Nether at some point in the not-too-distant future. For now, though, we can take our Wither Skeleton bones and back through in the overworld, we can craft those, ideally, into a Wither Skeleton data model. Nice. So I'm going to do the same thing here, I guess, for the magma cube. What do we need for the magma cube? We need a blazing slime block, which requires a regular slime block, which I don't think we have. We do not. How are we going to get regular slime? It looks like we can buy it from the catalog. Perfect. It does look like you can also make it using clay and biomass, because buying 9 is a little expensive, but you know what? We've got so many tech books that I'm just going to buy 9. Nice. We can then craft that into a block of slime, like so, and then from there we can go ahead and empower that with 4 blaze powder. Do we have a single blaze yet? We do. So we can actually choose here to make blaze rods or blaze powder. I'm going to choose the blaze rods because 6 blaze rods, I believe, is going to get us even more blaze powder. So let's lock that. And then presumably we can kind of like crush this, yeah, into 4. So it's definitely more efficient to do it that way. Let's crush you down. Let's take those out. And then now back over in our empowering stand, we should be able to go ahead and clear this out because these are no longer needed, of course. And make sure there's no extra gunpowder in there either. We can put those away. That's kind of done its job for now. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, and slime. Cool. And so that should be the magma cube data model. Oh, you need 2 of them. I actually don't know if we have enough tech books to pull that game twice. It looks like we totally do. I might live to regret spending like 140 tech books on 18 slime balls, but we can always make more of them, right? So once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and boom, that's going to get us our second one, and then that's going to get us the magma cube data model. Interestingly, it looks like our limiting factor now is actually power. Like our limiting factor on antimatter, and therefore our limiting factor on ultimate technium, is the power transfer for the anti-protonic nuclear synthesizer. We have enough power here. You'll see that we are losing power big time. We're producing 50,000 FE per tick, and we're spending 100,000 FE per tick, and so we are already using more than double the power we're producing, which I think a lot of that is going to be coming from the nuclear synthesizer here, which is using 80,000 or 40 to 80,000 FE per tick on its own. You can't put speed upgrades in here, unfortunately, so this is kind of just how it has to be, but that's real expensive. We could, if we wanted to, I think, like upgrade the pipe here. I assume the limiting factor is potentially, never mind, it's not the universal cable, it is going to be the induction matrix, because of course we did set up the induction matrix, but when we set it up, we did only put in, I think, one of the induction providers. And so that's going to limit how much we can send out. Let me take a look in here real quick and see what we've got going on. So right now, thankfully this does retain its inventory. We have got 2 basic induction cells, 2 advanced induction cells, and then 1 basic induction provider. And the basic induction provider, I think, is limiting us to 100,000 FE per tick on the output. So let me go ahead and reassemble this, because without it, our whole base goes offline. And then let's see if we can't request like a higher tier provider. That's only going to make our power problems worse, of course, because it's just going to mean that we're using even more power than we're producing than we currently are. But for the time being, it is going to help us make ultimate Technium faster. And so let me see here. Did I teach my system how to make these providers? I did not. That would have been far too easy. Thankfully, we can go ahead and teach our system how to make these. Let's do one of those in code. We should have, hopefully, some lithium lying around. And so if we just do one of these, can I request another one of those providers? I can. We could, of course, upgrade it to the next tier of provider. That would massively increase the rate at which we could provide power. But, of course, the more of these that we put down, the faster we just kind of burn through the power that we already have. I might do one more. That's going to allow us to triple up and do like a maximum 300,000 FE per tick, which is going to be a lot faster and is hopefully fine. As I mentioned, though, we are definitely going to have to look at just upgrading our power in general, because right now we are just not producing enough of it, especially when it comes to making ultimate Technium at any reasonable speed. So with that back online, look at that, we are now sending 307,000 FE per tick out, which has made this 3 times as fast, and so we should start to see the ultimate Technium coming in, but it also means we're probably not going to last a super long time, although we do have 16 billion FE in here, so it might last a little bit of time before that becomes a serious problem for us. Cool. Okay, so with that, we can now go back to that magma cube data model, and I think I do now have everything it takes to make one. I do. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and get these 2 up and running using the same system over here, and then hopefully in the time it takes me to do that, we will acquire enough ultimate Technium ingots to allow us to do the gas data model as well. And once we have another 6 ultimate Technium, I believe we are now at a point where we should be able to make the gas data model as well, the last one on our list. Over here, we are pretty much good to go. Let me get the magma cube out there just so I can get that. I actually don't know what I want to make here with that. Here we have the wither skeleton, perfect. We actually want to make the skulls, I think, or at least we are going to need the skulls if we want to make the nether stars. And then blaze we also should have. I do kind of want to grab one of the blaze ones to complete the quest, so we could maybe do with trying to catch one of those at some point, or maybe turning this off. But now we should be able to do the exact same thing with the gas data model as well. For that, we just need to take some flint and run that through our crusher, because in order to make the gas data model, we need 2 double compressed gunpowder. So 162 gunpowder, which is just 162 flint crushed, which should be very doable, especially with a quick time in a bottle there. That should get us a ton of gunpowder. And once we have all of that, we can make a bunch of compressed gunpowder, and we can, of course, then go ahead and make 2 double compressed gunpowder, which should be everything we need, or almost everything we need, in order to do this. Let me first request one more of those, and once we have that final model framework, we can make yet another nether data model, and with that nether data model, we can go ahead and make our gas data model. We're just missing 3 ultimate Technium nuggets, which might take a little while to come in, because we are now out of fluidizer casing, and the fluidizer casing is actually limited here by cyanite, and so we're going to have to spend some time increasing our cyanite production to get that back online. Downstairs, the reactor that we currently have is not doing the job anywhere near fast enough. We have a couple of things we could do. We could put down more reprocessors to turn more uranium into cyanite, or we could look at making our reactor bigger downstairs as well, which would also have the side benefit of producing more power for us as well, which is going to be necessary if we don't want to run out of power very soon. But I think that next time, chat, we're going to come back and we're going to look at combining all of these mob drops together into debris. That debris should then allow us to make this ancient infuser, which is going to finally allow us to make the ancient debris. And then from there, we should be able to actually get started on making the hellish Technium as well. We can get the multi-block set up. That, of course, does also have to be set up in the nether, but that should be very doable, I think. Of course, we do also have power to work on, and of course we have this uranium problem to work on as well, but that is a problem for future Isaac. For now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Techopolis 3 there.